Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Those of you who follow my channel will know that my favorite opening in chess is the Vienna Gambit. And as a recap, e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, and then the very lovely f4, gambiting that f-pawn. And one of the very interesting things about chess is that even though I must have played hundreds of games of the Vienna Gambit, sometimes you can be surprised as early as move 3. And in this game, my opponent surprised me by declining the Vienna Gambit with bishop to d6. So bishop out, developing a piece, and also defending their e5 pawn. Now, I know enough about the Vienna Gambit to know that this is a bad move, probably a bad move, but that doesn't mean I knew in the game how to actually punish it. And I thought, what am I going to do? Now, in the actual game, what I ended up doing was playing d4. And so the heuristic I was using was that, look, if you can take the full center, it's probably good to do so. And, you know, this also sets me up for a potential fork of those two pieces. However, if you look at the feedback, this was a mistake, a straight up blunder, in fact, according to Stockfish. It goes all the way to minus 0.23, while prior to this move, you will see that after the bishop sort of develops to d6, white has a plus 4.2 advantage, basically completely winning, or the flip side, this is a completely losing move for black on move 3. How should we respond to this decline of the Vienna Gambit though? Now, I had a look at Stockfish afterwards in the analysis, and this is what you should do. The basic idea is that the way to sort of defend against this is the same pattern as if the opponent declined with knight to c6, and that is a much more common line. The pattern that you do is exactly the same. So immediately capturing the pawn on e5. This, of course, needs to be responded to because it's attacking two of the opponent's pieces. And with the opponent having developed their bishop for the express purpose of defending that pawn, they are going to capture back, and that is in fact the best move. But now you've got d4 attacking the bishop. They must do something. And there is only one logical move, which is to go back to d6. And, you know, none of these squares make any sense because they're all defended by my pieces. So bishop back to d6, and now e-pawn forward, e5, and those two pieces again are forked by a pawn. Now the opponent can try to sort of pin the pawn with their queen, but just like with the other line, with the knight decline to c6, it doesn't work. So here the opponent will lose a move. I think they're around, again, you know, a little bit over +4 in this position. You're better developed, piece up, basically you're winning. Now in the actual game, so here we go, as I said, you know, I played the d4 move, and the very interesting thing is if we have a quick look at the review of the game, I didn't play the most accurately here, but, you know, after my mistake, you can see the opponent blunders right back, and I basically capture the lead. And afterwards, I either make a mistake again, but again, it's one of these mistakes where, you know, the opponent is not able to capitalize it. A very tricky position, and look at this, a brilliancy. We'll have a look at this brilliancy in the context of the game, because this game actually demonstrates some of the general principles with playing a Vienna Gambit game. All right, let's go back to the analysis. After this, my opponent made a mistake with developing their other knight. What they should have done is to have captured this way, because if I then capture back with queen, this, of course, comes with tempo. I, of course, now capture and, you know, these two pieces are forked. The opponent tries to make the best of a bad situation, aiming to sort of pin my knight, but that's okay because if they capture, that pawn captures back, and I have this very good chain and central control. So in this position, free knight, take it. queen captures back. That was expected. This is, of course, a potential problem. So prophylaxis and also just developing the other knight is generally good. Now that queen cannot cause a check, as can be seen sort of in the video from from earlier this week. They short castles, makes sense. Here, I decide to push a pawn, immediately asking what they're going to do with that queen. Very interesting. They try to pin the pawn to my king. And one of the themes, of course, of the Vienna Gambit is that given that I have a semi-open f-file, is I want to pile on pressure on the f-file and particularly target the f7 pawn. By moving their rook out, it's no longer defending that pawn. And this will turn out to be a mistake in a few moves. I now play sort of bishop to e2, thinking that I wanted to avoid that, avoid the problem with that pin. You can see Stockfish is completely unafraid, wants the bishop to immediately attack the f7 pawn like a savage. They take my knight. I capture back. Of course, that queen is still hanging, so they need to do something. I guess as mentioned before, very, very good for me. Queen out of the way, and now I short castles. That rook, of course, now having command of that semi-open f-file. Very good. d6 makes a lot of sense. However, I now have knight g5. Two attackers now. Of course, queen can't take that knight because, you know, it's defended by the bishop. And you can see Stockfish needed that rook to go back to defend. And by not doing so, I now have that infiltration. Rook captures pawn on f7 with an attack on the queen. No, the king cannot take that rook. So queen must do something. Hovers back. Here I opted to, I thought it was very clever here. It's still a pretty good move. So bishop to c4. Basically, I could move the rook with a discovered check, potentially winning the queen. Now, Stockfish sees another strategy. Queen to d3, of course, a potential mate in one threat. Now, this was a general strategy, which is, again, very important in the Vienna game, especially if the opponent weakens sort of the light squares around the king. I didn't actually see that in this game. Opponent now does a pretty good move, d5, attacking that bishop. And here I started to get a little bit spooked, with multiple pieces being attacked by and so I, rather than doing this move, which I think was the best, I sort of go, look, I'm just going to take out that pawn. That was a blunder, but still +4, still pretty good, They capture, and here is the brilliancy. Queen h5. Now, I decided that that knight was lost anyway. I thought that was potentially okay. Bring the queen out, the bishop can come out, the rook can come in. I thought I potentially was still in a very, very good place here. I thought this was good. I didn't realize it was brilliant. And to be perfectly honest, I don't play this position as if it were a brilliancy after this. And I thought it actually would be good to show how it would be brilliant. So, with that capture of the knight, which was entirely expected, this is what I needed to do. The rook needed to potentially sacrifice itself. In fact, sacrifice itself again. And if I make that move, of course, king is in check. Now, let's say the black thinks, oh, this is all very tricky, and chooses not to take the rook. That would be a terrible mistake because that would be check, only forced move, and checkmate. So they can't do that. The opponent must capture the rook. Looks like they're sort of +5 now, but now queen captures the pawn, and the opponent really only has one square to go. If I show you quickly the lines here, you will see here there's sort of +2. All the other lines are +7. So in sort of other sort of versions of this game where I sort of examine at different levels of depth, there's either +15. I've even seen +50 with these other lines. So definitely these are devastatingly bad lines. This is the only one that's any good. And if you sort of follow down these lines, what you discover is I end up having a forced capture of the opponent's queen. One of these pawns moves up and becomes a second queen potentially. So it's actually really, really bad for black. So this move is in fact the only good move for black. And now I've got bishop to a3, which comes with check. And the only good move here, if you see from Stockfish, is to block with the rook. And I would say that that is a very inhuman looking move. I doubt any human will sort of see that. And pretty much the most normal looking move, I think, is probably king moving forward. But then we're now in checkmate lines. So this is why all the way back here that this was a brilliant move. Now, as I said, I didn't play this as if it were a brilliancy. I couldn't quite countenance, just sacking my rook that way. So instead I thought, oh, that pawn looks like it's undefended. So I captured that instead. And you can see apparently, a blunder. Who would have thought, And I thought that was a pretty clever move because that opens up the attack on sort of the opponent's rook. Apparently that was a blunder. However, the opponent needed to have played the most accurate move, but instead they blunder right back. And here, of course, I do very well, plus 20. Take that free rook, comes with check, now come back. King sort of has to bounce back. I capture that sort of free pawn and also opening up the rank to develop my rook. So I here thought I was doing pretty well. They capture a pawn, whatever. Lining up for a potential mate in one. The opponent has to do something. They did, and I thought that was really clever actually. Blocking that mate in one with that bishop move. I now bring rook f1. Opponent sort of does another knight move, but here I thought things must be pretty good. I didn't think any of these moves were really doing very much for the opponent. So bishop h3, that took me a little bit of time to find, I think, and I was very proud of that move. Of course, that pawn is pinned, so it can't capture, and again, setting up for another mate in one. Opponent now sort of blocks, and here I thought I couldn't see how to sort of navigate, definitely didn't see that mate, but what I did see was that in this position, I thought I had a reasonably good chance of forcing a series of trades, which I did calculate where I would be up. And that is what happened. Queen captures, so queen trade. And now at the end of it, I have a fork, king and rook. And so we enter the endgame, 2 rooks versus 1, absolutely winning for me. And it's really a matter of forcing king to the edge of the board, which we've done. That will be checkmate. The opponent needs to potentially block that. They give me a check, but there's no second check from here, and they move to the wrong square. Mate, good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to immediately capture the pawn on e4 if the opponent tries to decline the Vienna Gambit by defending it with their bishop. I hope you found this video interesting, and thanks for watching.